The US thought the trade war was finally over. Instead, the deal with China has turned into a silent panic in Washington. Scott Bessent rushed onto national television, defending Trump's truce and calling it a triumph. Yet every word revealed how uneasy the US really is. If this deal was a win, why does it feel like Washington is panicking? Behind the public smiles, the cracks are obvious. Beijing turned the rare earth taps back on, but that hasn't brought stability. China's readout of the deal was vague and diplomatic. General commitments, no figures, no guarantees. The US version, on the other hand, was full of numbers, milestones, and targets that Beijing never confirmed. Both sides left the table believing they signed two completely different agreements. And that's the real problem. America wanted control. China wanted flexibility. The result is an uneasy truce built on assumptions. Every day that passes, Beijing shows it can still decide how much rare earth, food, or tech the US gets, and when. So while Bessent stands in front of cameras trying to prove that Trump's strategy worked, China is quietly proving something else, that the power balance never changed, only the illusion of victory did. When the details of the new US-China trade deal finally came out, it didn't take long for experts to realize something was off. Beijing's official statement was short, calm, and carefully worded. It mentioned cooperation, market stability, and mutual understanding. But there were no numbers, no deadlines, and no measurable targets. Washington's readout, however, painted a completely different picture. Pages of promises, percentages, and fixed goals that China never actually confirmed. It looked like two countries had signed two different deals. One of the key points was about rare earth exports, the very materials that power America's tech, defense, and energy industries. The agreement said China would issue general licenses, but it never defined how much the US could actually buy. Could American companies import as much as they wanted for stockpiling? Or would Chinese producers decide the limits? No one could answer that. Another part focused on fentanyl and tariffs. Washington claimed victory for reducing illegal flows, but then quietly cut the fentanyl tariff from 20% to 10%. That makes little sense if the goal is to restrict imports. And when it comes to US food exports, wheat, corn, and beef, the gap is even wider. China continues to buy mostly from Brazil and Argentina, where prices are lower and shipping routes are cheaper. As for soybeans, Beijing only promised to expand agricultural trade. No quantities, no time frame. That kind of pledge is as reliable as a New Year's resolution to start going to the gym. Easy to announce, easy to forget. The deeper issue runs through the entire deal. There are no milestones, no enforcement triggers, no if this then that rules that make trade predictable. The US wanted accountability. China left room for maneuver. And that imbalance now defines the entire agreement, setting the stage for the tension and frustration already building in Washington. Scott Bessent has spent the last few weeks doing interviews, insisting that China screwed up by restricting rare earth exports. He claims Beijing miscalculated and gave the US the upper hand. But when you look closer, his confidence seems more like an attempt to save face. China hasn't lost leverage. It's using it more strategically than ever. In an interview with the Financial Times, Bessent laid out what he called America's new direction, Fortress America. He says the US will keep pushing allies, the EU, the UK, Australia, Canada, and Japan, to raise tariff walls against Chinese goods. He even boasted that America's trade deficit with China is down by 25% this year. On paper, that sounds like success. But behind the numbers, global trade is shifting in the opposite direction. Those tariffs aren't isolating China. They're driving US allies closer to it. From Germany to Japan, manufacturers are buying more Chinese components because there's no cheaper or more reliable source. Europe can't lower production costs without Russian energy, and Asian supply chains are already deeply tied to Chinese factories. Even countries under pressure from Washington are finding it nearly impossible to cut those links. That's what Bessent's narrative misses. The US can keep lecturing about overcapacity and calling for fair trade, but the rest of the world is quietly adapting to a Chinese-centered economy. The harder Washington pushes, the more its allies hedge their bets. Bessent can claim victory on television, but he can't change the basic math. The G7 can't decouple from China without crippling their own industries. Washington's new strategy sounds confident, but beneath the surface lies a question no one wants to answer. How fast can America actually replace China? When Trump was asked whether China plays the long game, he replied, "We play the long game too." But do they really? In America, every 4 years can flip the country's entire direction. No one knows if Trump's tariff regime will survive for the next 3 years or the next 30. That's the weakness Beijing understands well, and it's exactly what Scott Bessent is trying to hide behind his confident speeches. And even Trump himself admits how complex this rivalry has become.
But as you know, the Chinese, they think in 100 years.
Sure.
They played the long game, including on our own soil.
We play the long game too.
Our own intelligence agencies say the Chinese have infiltrated parts of the American power grid and our water systems. They steal American intellectual property and Americans' personal information. They bought American farmland. How big of a threat is China?
It's like everybody else. We're a threat to them too. Many of the things that you say, we do to them.
Trump's answer captures America's dilemma, acknowledging the threat, yet treating it like a competition that never really ends. Bessent has become the loudest voice defending Trump's strategy. In interviews, he insists that America is finally waking up, that this administration has a clear plan to break free from China's control. He talks about a new alliance of Western and Asian democracies, moving together at warp speed.
And the U.S. has been asleep at the switch, and now this administration, we're going to go at warp speed over the next 1-2 years, and we're going to get out from under this sword that the Chinese have over us, and they have it over the whole world. And this time, we have rallied the allies, and so it is going to be all the Western democracies, the Asian democracies, and India are also going to join us in this in trying to form our own supply chains.
It's an ambitious vision, but completely detached from how slow and difficult that process actually is. Building rare earth supply chains from scratch isn't something that can be done in 1 or 2 years. Every step is wrapped in environmental permits, safety reviews, and public opposition. Even if Trump borrowed trillions, you can't rush geology. On average, a new mine takes around 10 years to develop. A refinery, another 5. And that's assuming everything goes perfectly, which it rarely does. There's also another problem. Most of the world's rare earth expertise still comes from China. Engineers, chemical refiners, and extraction specialists. Many of them are under what Beijing informally calls an intellectual embargo. The knowledge pipeline to the West has been cut. Even if the U.S. manages to build new facilities, who will actually run them? Bessent talks about Operation Warp Speed like it's a switch America can flip. But rebuilding a supply chain from scratch isn't science fiction. To pull off what he's promising, he'd need something beyond resources. He'd need all 6 Infinity Stones. And even then, time would still be on China's side. According to the International Energy Agency, Chinese producers will still control around 60% of all rare earth mining and at least 70% of global refining by 2030. And when it comes to the 4 critical rare earth magnet elements, neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, and terbium, China will remain in pole position for the rest of this decade. That dominance isn't just a statistic, it's the foundation of modern industry. From electric vehicles and wind turbines to fighter jets and AI chips, every supply chain begins with materials that flow through China's refineries. Even if the US and its allies pour billions into new projects, the math doesn't work in their favor. Chinese refineries enjoy cheap Russian energy and access to discounted commodities that no Western producer can match. That makes their refining costs dramatically lower and their market power almost impossible to challenge. If the US tries to rebuild these supply chains on its own, the cost could easily double. It's the kind of operation where you spend $2 just to get $1 of output. That's the painful reality of trying to compete with China's industrial ecosystem. And if Beijing retaliates again, the outcome is predictable. The last time China imposed export controls, Europe paid 6 times more for rare earth materials, and the US nearly couldn't secure any at all. Inside China, prices barely changed. Local companies and end users kept paying the same rates. This is why Bessent's optimism sounds detached from reality. Beijing doesn't just dominate production, it dictates the global pricing system itself. When China adjusts supply, the entire world feels it. And that's the leverage no Western alliance has been able to match. The deeper Washington digs into its Fortress America strategy, the clearer it becomes that China still holds the high ground. Scott Bessent keeps assuring investors that the US economy is in good shape, but even he admits that several sectors are already in recession. Inflation remains stuck well above the Federal Reserve's 2% target, and the damage from the latest tariff war is starting to spread. Since tariff war in April, consumer confidence has been falling every month. Expectations for future growth have collapsed, and households are tightening spending just as prices for essentials remain high. When pressed about these warning signs, Bessent gave a surprisingly cautious answer, one that reveals more concern than confidence.
A recession. Do you agree that the U.S. is at risk of facing a recession?
I believe that we are in a transition period here, as we are seeing.
But do you think that the U.S. is at risk of a recession if the Fed does not continue to drop rates?
I think that we are in good shape, but I think that there are sectors of the economy that are in recession, and the Fed has caused a lot of distributional problems.
His words sound measured, but they confirm what everyone can already see. Parts of the US economy are breaking down. Job growth has slowed sharply, with a wave of layoffs hitting the tech sector first. Many firms are freezing new hires or relocating production overseas to escape higher import costs. Meanwhile, the federal government remains partially shut down, delaying contracts and freezing spending across key agencies. Every new tariff adds more strain to an economy already running on debt and speculation. The only thing keeping markets excited is artificial intelligence. Bessent calls it America's growth engine, and for now, it is. In the second quarter, AI-related investment alone added 1.6% to US GDP growth, an extraordinary number driven by the construction of data centers and demand for high-end chips. But that boom depends on Chinese rare earths, the same materials caught in Trump's trade crossfire. Imagine the US economy as a massive Jenga tower. Tariffs, rare earths, and AI are the key blocks holding it together. Pull out just one, and the entire structure starts to shake. That's why Bessent's optimism sounds so fragile. America's short-term growth rests on a technology boom built on Chinese resources, while its consumers struggle under rising costs and slowing jobs. The foundation may still stand for now, but every new policy shift makes it more unstable. To fund this ambitious push to rebuild supply chains, Washington will have to rely on one thing: debt. The US is already running massive deficits, and Scott Bessent has hinted that a new liquidity tsunami is coming. In plain terms, that means printing and borrowing more money to keep the economy alive. Cheap credit may buy time, but it also weakens the dollar, the very foundation of America's global power. Lower interest rates can help corporations and consumers in the short run, yet every cut chips away at the dollar's value. The same policies that make borrowing easier also erode trust in the world's reserve currency. And without that trust, the US loses its greatest advantage: the ability to finance its deficits without consequences. Bessent's plan depends on endless liquidity, but the world is already looking for safer alternatives. China, meanwhile, isn't slowing down. It's reinforcing trade routes, securing energy from Russia, and deepening ties with Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Every new partnership builds a system that functions even if the dollar weakens. Beijing knows the weak spots in the US economy: high debt, fragile supply chains, and political division, and it's using time as a weapon. Both sides have paused for now, but this isn't peace. It's the calm before another financial storm. Scott Bessent can call it warp speed, but you can't outrun gravity. The world's economy still revolves around China's rare earths, and America is running out of time to catch up. Do you think Bessent's plan can work, or is the US heading straight for a rare earth recession? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.